In this modern day and age, we've now developed urban legends and myths about our technology. While some are clearly fiction and some stories are cautionary tales, others, like the creepypastas you can find online about video games, are quite entertaining, regardless of whether or not you think they're inspired by true events. So today we're returning to our list of the top 10 gaming creepypastas. Part 2 this time around. We'll be talking about some more famous urban legends that have been floating around the interwebs for years now, a handful of myths, and also some other ones that are lesser known but just as intriguing. So with that in mind, let's jump in. And at number 10, unknown format. Ripping and pirating are things we probably shouldn't do, but that hasn't stopped thousands and thousands of gamers from giving it a go from time to time. Unknown format is a cautionary tale for those who like to illegally download rather than buy. It's written in the form of a letter from a friend addressing his pal, who tells of how he started ripping games. Running into some copy protection problems, he ends up trying an obscure torrent site, and downloads a Japanese program called Shikami no Tigen, which roughly translates into Four Gods in Heaven according to the author. He gives it a go, but it seems kind of glitchy. A warning then pops up on his screen reading that files will be in unknown format, renamed .iso and mount external. Do not try to run. It's tedious, but he manages to go through most of the files and renames them as instructed. It works, and he manages to play a bunch of different games. Eventually, though, he decides to run Portal 2, one of the games whose files he didn't fully rename. An error message in Japanese appears that he can't read, so he switches the computer's language into Japanese to C, but surprisingly, the game just starts working. But it doesn't run like it should. Instead, it's filled with a bunch of disturbing imagery, so he shuts it off and tries another game with the files that he didn't rename. Civilization this time. It gives him really bizarre and inappropriate research options, so he tries another one, Serious Sam, which depicts grotesque things like human sacrifice. When he tries to uninstall everything, his speakers begin to play sounds of people speaking in Japanese, which then eventually turns into screaming. Up next, number 9, Evil Otto. Many of these creepypastas and urban legends concern games created in the 80s and 90s, and Berserk is no different, except that its urban legend is based on something that's 100% true. The game is rumored to kill players if you get a very high score. It was an arcade game that was fairly popular back in the day when it was released in 1980, and it had 64,000 levels. Essentially, you play as a green stick man and fire lasers at foes as you navigate simplistic mazes filled with robots. But where it gets difficult is when Evil Otto comes into play. Your main nemesis in the game, Evil Otto, appears as a smiley face. He speeds up the pace of the game, and unlike other bosses or villainous foes, you can't kill him. He can travel through walls and can only be escaped. If he touches you, you're dead. 2 real-life deaths have been associated with Berserk. One, Peter Burkowski, an 18-year-old, died after setting 2 record-high scores within the space of 15 minutes at an arcade in Illinois. He died of cardiac arrest. The second, Jeff Daly, who died in 1981 at the age of 19, scored 16,660 points in the game, then died of a heart attack right after he entered his initials into the machine. Moving on to number 8, The Numbers Station. From a game that originated in the 80s to a title much more recent, the myths around the Number Station from Fallout 3 are downright creepy. There's a few fictionalized takes on this one, but they all generally contain the same information at their core. The Galaxy News radio station in Fallout 3 repeats heavily coded numbers and messages that correlate with major events and deaths in real life, all of which occurred after the game was released. One is the exact time of death of Gary Coleman, which was followed by the message, "What you talking about? You'll be missed." What you talking about is Coleman's character's catchphrase on the show Different Strokes. Another set of numbers that appear predicts the BP oil spill, with the message reading, "Accident in the Gulf, several dead, oil spill apparently averted." Now, many have speculated that the numbers in the game tell the future, although Bethesda has denied that theory has any sort of truth in it. Next up at number 7, Jack the Ripper. This creepypasta tells of a man who revisits an old game he remembers playing as a child, called The Murders of Jack the Ripper, a game considered to be a hidden object game, where you must look for a list of objects in order to progress, with the goal of the game being to investigate the murders of Jack the Ripper. The man plays the game despite receiving a bunch of errors and warnings while going through it. Now, during his playthrough, he notices some odd occurrences, and by the end of the game, he starts to see more realistic artwork that a game created back then would not have been capable of. It's realistic depictions of the murders themselves. After he plays through the game again, a bonus level is unlocked, and it features the suspect who the detective in the game assumed was Jack the Ripper. It depicts that man as being crucified. He shuts off the game and never returns to it. Up next, number 6, Attract Mode. Attract Mode is a 3-part creepypasta that is set in an arcade, following the author and his not-so-nice friend Nicholas. The two of them stumble upon an arcade game called Skull and Crossbow, which is essentially a ripoff of the game Centipede. They start playing it, and the author begins to develop an obsession with the game, and with defeating a skeleton snake character known as Oad in the game's Attract Mode. His buddy Nicholas ends up shoving the author out of the way when he's on his last life, causing him to lose the game. Upset, the author tries to get his quarters back from the machine and squeezes him behind it. This is when he discovers that there is no backside of the arcade cabinet. Nicholas pushes him out of the way to go inside the cabinet and get a look for himself, but then he completely disappears. The rest of the creepypasta follows the author hunting down the creators of Skull and Crossbow, which is a fictional game, in an attempt to find his missing friend, but slowly begins to go mad himself while doing it. Up next, number 5, Super Mario 128. After Mario 64 was a mega hit, there were rumors that Nintendo was dabbling in a sequel that featured more realistic graphics. This is the basis for Super Mario 128. Apparently, this was a game that was never fully developed, but contained some realistic violent graphics that consoles like the original PlayStation were capable of doing at the time. We follow the story of a player who tries this unfinished game out, managing to find an online copy of it. The first thing they notice is how much darker in tone the game was from others in the Mario franchise. Bowser threatened Mario with Peach's death. Characters like Toad were cruel to Mario and suggested that he should just surrender to Bowser. Mario would drop and become still for long periods of time before letting the player regain control of him. And the game ended with Bowser eating Mario in a fairly brutal manner, with the final level titled Mario's Eternal Home. This level featured Mario walking around aimlessly in an entirely black space, with voices fading in and out, as if the character was stuck in purgatory. And at number 4, Polybius. Polybius is perhaps the most famous gaming urban legend to date. The stories about the game started circulating online around the year 2000, and generally tell of an arcade game that appeared in Portland, Oregon in 1981 that was incredibly addictive. The machine itself was unmarked, minus the title of the game at its top. It was so addictive that people would form lines in order to play it. According to some, men in black would visit the machines collecting data from them. The machines were apparently being used as part of a government-run psychology experiment, and the gameplay would have intense psychoactive and addictive side effects. Players would leave the arcade feeling ill, later having hallucinations, insomnia, night terrors, and amnesia. A month after the machine's release, it completely disappeared without a trace. There are different versions of the story embellished in creepypastas that you can find online of people claiming to retell their own experiences playing Polybius 2. It's worth a Google if you're curious. In our number 3 spot, The Gray Man. This creepypasta is based on a real game, the LSD Dream Emulator, which is a pretty trippy game to begin with. It's based off of one of the programmer's dream journals, and definitely worth taking a look at. In the game, there's a shadowy figure that appears, known as the Gray Man. He'll pop up at random times and will slowly approach the player, eventually disappearing in a flash of light if he gets too close. This creepypasta follows the story of a 17-year-old who plays LSD Dream Emulator with his pal for his friend's YouTube Let's Play series. They encounter the Gray Man, and it's freaky per usual. But then his friend starts to see the Gray Man in his dreams. One night he goes to visit his friend, and to his surprise finds him in a frantic state. He tells our protagonist he just woke from a dream with the Gray Man, where the Gray Man had been drowning him for what felt like a week. From then on, his friend becomes increasingly distant. He would fall asleep in class and awake screaming, and became what the author describes as a shell of a human being. He later tells the author that he can't go to sleep without being tortured by the Gray Man. That's when he finds a file on his friend's computer labeled psxfin.exe, which opens the Dream Emulator. He plays where his friend left off, but doesn't encounter the Gray Man at all. That night, he sees his friend in his own dream. The next day at school, his friend has completely disappeared. After a day, the police begin searching for him, and a few weeks later, his body is found in the woods, with forensics later concluding that he had bludgeoned himself to death soon after the time he had gone missing. Next up at number 2, Pale Luna. Pale Luna is a story originating from the 80s, from a time where gaming aficionados would meet in person to swap games, and early programmers would design their own computer games to share in their circle of acquaintances, often passing off the games by word of mouth. Pale Luna is said to be one of those games, although it never circulated outside of the San Francisco Bay Area. Most copies of the game have been destroyed by now, but its story still prevails. It's a text adventure that begins with a blank screen and a line of text that reads, "You are in a dark room. Moonlight shines through the window. There is gold in the corner, along with a shovel and a rope. There is a door to the east. Command? Depending on what you would do, you would get another line of text that would read, reap your reward. Pale Luna smiles at you." Now, as you progressed, if you tried to use the commands, use gold, use shovel, or use rope, the game wouldn't let you. Most people would give up there. feeling that they'd hit a dead end, or that they were playing an unfinished game. But one player allegedly tried a bunch of different text combinations and reached a new area that repeated "Pale Luna smiles wide" over and over again. This would eventually lead him to some numbers that turned out to be coordinates that led him to the real-life Lassen Volcanic Park. Armed with a shovel, a compass, and a map, he noticed that he repeated the turns he took in the game in order to get to the coordinates. This is where he found a patch of uneven dirt. He began to dig, until finally his shovel hit something. It was the head of a decomposing little girl, later identified as an 11-year-old that had gone missing a year and a half prior. Efforts to find the programmer of Pale Luna failed, and the rest of the girl's body was never found. And last but not least, in at number 1, JVK11667.ESB, aka the Haunted Morrowind mod. While the Elder Scrolls games are full of creepy moments and creatures from time to time, it's this creepypasta concerning Morrowind that takes the cake when it comes to the franchise's scariest of the scary. This mod didn't really make all that much sense at first. When you loaded it up, it would lock your game for an hour and corrupt your install and all of your saves. But some players discovered that if you ran it in MS-DOS emulator, it got even weirder, if that wasn't already weird enough as is. Reports would say that the mod would do things like cause many NPCs to die immediately, leaving their corpses around for you to find. As you continued onwards, more NPCs would die, until many locations were practically ghost towns. Those who didn't die would look up into the sky at night and say, "Watch the sky," or not even respond to you at all when you tried to speak to them. In addition to this, your own health would slowly decrease, with it decreasing faster if you stood still. And lastly, there was a dungeon that the mod added, which would display images from your computer from your My Pictures folder on its walls. When you exited the dungeon, something weird happened. The night sky was no longer the sky of Tamriel. It changed to a depiction of the real-life sky. Some players figured out by looking at the constellations that the date of when it started was around February 2005. Every time you died or went back to the Citadel, it would start over, returning to that point in time. Characters still looked up at the sky, but their eyes would bleed. The game started to get so dark that you had to use a light spell at times. And for one user, an assassin appeared with spindly spider legs. After this occurred, players reported dreaming about the mod and the sky and that assassin. While links for the mod can be found online, no one has ever been able to recreate these events from the mod, leaving many people to speculate that it's just simply a creepypasta, and that this version of the mod never actually existed. Alright, there we have it, friends. Which of these creepypastas do you think could be true? Are there any other creepypastas that we didn't mention on our part 1 or part 2 that you think we should know about? Give us a shout in the comments below and let us know. In the meantime though, why not take a look at the playlist currently flashing on your screen for more great gaming videos? And if you want more Top 10 Gaming, be sure to subscribe. We do lists, updates, news, and everything else video games. In the meantime guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.